She was a young woman in her late 20s, someone who had spent years learning how to move quietly through the world. Her name was Aisha, and she worked as a mid-level administrative officer at a large, sensitive government complex on the outskirts of the capital. Every morning, she woke up before dawn, dressed in a simple, ironed shirt and dark trousers, and commuted for an hour to reach the high, gray walls of the facility. Her job was not glamorous. She processed files, logged visitor requests, and ensured that communication between different departments ran smoothly. But she took pride in it. For Aisha, this job was a lifeline. It paid for her younger brother's school fees and her mother's medical bills. It gave her a sense of purpose. The complex was protected by layers of security. The outermost gate was manned by a small team of base guardsmen in crisp blue uniforms who checked badges, scanned vehicles, and asked the same questions 100 times a day. To them, Aisha was just another face in the morning crowd. She was one of hundreds of employees who passed through that gate before the sun had fully risen. Over the 2 years she had worked there, she had learned the guards' rhythms. Some nodded at her. Some barely looked up from their clipboards. One guard in particular, a stout man with a thick mustache named Head Constable Sharma, had developed a habit of waving her through without even asking for her ID. "Good morning, ma'am," he would say, and she would flash her badge from 3 feet away. And he would lift the boom barrier. That morning, however, everything was different. Aisha had stayed up late the night before, helping her mother with an unexpected medical emergency. Her mother had suffered from high blood pressure for years, and the previous evening, she had complained of severe dizziness. Aisha had rushed her to a neighborhood clinic, waited for hours, and only returned home after midnight. She had barely slept. Her alarm had failed to wake her, and when she finally opened her eyes, she was already 45 minutes behind schedule. She threw on her clothes, grabbed her bag, and forgot to eat breakfast. She also, in her exhaustion, forgot to double-check that her ID card was in its usual front pocket. She assumed it was. It always was. She arrived at the base gate at 8:47 a.m., later than usual. The morning rush had already faded, leaving only a thin stream of latecomers. The sun was climbing higher, and the air was beginning to feel heavy. She walked briskly toward the pedestrian entrance, her bag slung over one shoulder. Head Constable Sharma was standing near the barrier, sipping tea from a small clay cup. When he saw her approach, he did not smile. He did not nod. Instead, he took a deliberate step forward and held up his palm. "ID, ma'am," he said. His voice was flat, official. Aisha felt a small pinch of surprise. She reached into her bag's front pocket, where the ID always lived. Her fingers touched loose change, a pen, a packet of tissues, but not the hard plastic rectangle. She tried the side pocket. Nothing. She unzipped the main compartment and rummaged through folders, a water bottle, and her lunchbox. Still nothing. Her heart began to beat faster. She looked up at Constable Sharma and offered a small, apologetic smile. "I think I left it on my desk yesterday," she said. "But you know me, sir. I've been coming here for 2 years. My name is Aisha Khan. I work in the administrative block, 3rd floor." The guard's expression did not change. He set down his teacup and folded his arms across his chest. "Rules are rules, ma'am. No ID, no entry. You'll have to go back and get it." She understood the rule. She had read the employee handbook cover to cover. But her home was an hour away, and her mother was still weak from the previous night's episode. If she went back now, she would miss half the day's work, and her supervisor had already warned her about late arrivals. She tried to explain, "Sir, I can call my supervisor. He can vouch for me. Or I can fill out a temporary pass form." "There has to be a process." Constable Sharma shook his head slowly. "Temporary passes require prior approval. That's for visitors, not employees. You should have your ID. Everyone knows that." Behind her, a small line of latecomers was beginning to form. A man in a suit coughed impatiently. A woman carrying a stack of files shifted her weight from one foot to the other. Aisha felt the heat rise to her cheeks. She had never been publicly embarrassed like this. She was a rule follower by nature. She paid her taxes on time. She never littered. She held doors open for strangers. And now, because of one exhausted mistake, she was being treated like a trespasser. She tried again. "Please, sir, just call the administrative office. Ask for Mr. Mehta. He knows me. He'll confirm." The guard sighed. the way a tired parent sighs at a child who won't stop asking for candy. I don't have time to make phone calls for every person who forgets their ID. If I did that, I'd never get anything done. You have to leave the line, ma'am. Step aside. He gestured toward a small bench near the guard booth, a place where rejected visitors were told to wait. Aisha felt her eyes sting. She was not a visitor. She was an employee. She had worked weekends, stayed late during audits, and never once complained about the long hours. But in this moment, none of that mattered. Without the small plastic card, she was nobody. She stepped out of the line and sat on the bench. Her hands were trembling slightly. She pulled out her phone and called her supervisor, Mr. Mehta. The phone rang 4 times and went to voicemail. She tried again. Voicemail. She sent a text message at the main gate. Forgot my ID. Guard won't let me in. Please help. Minutes passed. The line behind her had moved forward, and the other latecomers were now inside the complex, their IDs scanned and cleared. Aisha was alone on the bench. The sun was fully up now, and the concrete beneath her feet was already warm. She watched as a delivery truck was waved through after a quick inspection. She watched as a senior officer walked past the guard with a casual nod. No ID check required. She watched as Constable Sharma resumed sipping his tea, his back turned to her, as if she had already ceased to exist. 20 minutes became 30. Her phone buzzed. Mr. Mehta had replied, "I'm in a meeting until 10. Wait at the gate. We'll come down after." She felt a mixture of relief and frustration. At least someone was coming. But 30 more minutes of sitting on this bench, in this growing heat, being ignored by every guard who walked past it felt like a small punishment for a very small mistake. She considered leaving. She considered calling her mother and explaining that she would be late, that the medical appointment might have to be rescheduled. But something kept her in place. A quiet stubbornness. She had not broken any real rule. She had simply forgotten a card. And she had worked too hard, for too long, to be treated like an intruder. At the 40-minute mark, she decided to try one more time. She stood up, walked back to the barrier, and addressed Constable Sharma directly. "Sir, my supervisor is coming down in a few minutes. Can I at least wait inside the visitor area? It's very hot out here." The guard did not even turn around. "Wait on the bench," he said. "That's where people without IDs wait." She returned to the bench. The anger inside her was no longer a small flame. It was a steady, burning coal. She was not angry at the rule. She understood rules. She was angry at the application of the rule. The guard had the authority to make a phone call, to check her name against the employee database, to show a sliver of discretion. But he had chosen not to. He had chosen to stand behind a barrier of procedure, not because he was protecting the complex, but because it was easier than helping. She looked down at her phone. 9:32 a.m., 45 minutes had passed. And then, in the distance, she saw something that made her sit up straighter. A black sedan was approaching the gate. It was not an ordinary car. It was long, polished, with dark-tinted windows and a small flag mounted on the front fender. Behind it, 2 more identical sedans followed in tight formation. Aisha knew what those cars meant. She had seen them before, gliding through the complex's inner corridors, surrounded by aides and security personnel. Those cars belonged to very important people. People with stars on their shoulders. The sedans pulled up to the barrier. Constable Sharma snapped to attention, his entire demeanor transforming in an instant. He stood straight, tucked his stomach in, and saluted crisply. The window of the first sedan rolled down, just a few inches. A face appeared, a sharp, serious face with gray hair and deep-set eyes. The face spoke a few quiet words to the guard. Sharma nodded rapidly and began to raise the boom barrier. But then, something unexpected happened. The sedan did not move forward. Instead, the rear door opened. A man stepped out. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark olive uniform with 4 gold stars on each collar. Aisha recognized him immediately. It was Lieutenant General Ravi Deshmukh, the head of the entire regional command. She had seen him give a speech once at an annual ceremony. He was a man whose presence made rooms go quiet. He was not someone who visited the main gate. He was someone who was brought tea and saluted from 50 feet away. General Deshmukh did not look at Constable Sharma. He looked directly at Aisha, sitting alone on the bench, her bag in her lap, her face flushed from the sun. He walked toward her. Behind him, The doors of the other two sedans opened, and 4 more officers stepped out. Aisha counted the stars on their shoulders. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 generals. 5 of the most powerful men in the country's defense apparatus, standing in the dusty morning. The general stopped in front of her. His voice was low, calm, but carried an unmistakable weight. "You are Aisha Khan." She nodded, unable to speak. "I was told you have been waiting here for nearly an hour," he said. It was not a question. He glanced at the guard booth, then back at her. "Your supervisor, Mr. Mehta, called my office. He said you are one of his most dedicated employees. He said you have never been late without reason. He said your mother is unwell." Aisha felt her throat tighten. She had not told Mr. Mehta about her mother. He had remembered on his own. General Deshmukh extended his hand. "Come with me, Aisha. I will personally escort you to your desk." Behind him, Constable Sharma's face had gone pale. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The other guards had frozen in place, unsure whether to salute, run, or simply disappear. The general did not acknowledge them. He turned and walked back toward his sedan, holding the door open for Aisha. She stood up, legs shaking, and walked forward. She did not look at Sharma. She did not need to. The silence behind her said everything. As the sedan pulled through the gate and into the complex, Aisha looked out the tinted window. The guard booth grew smaller and smaller in the distance. She thought about the long morning, the heat, the humiliation, the bench. She thought about the 5 generals who had appeared within minutes of Mr. Mehta's phone call. She did not know how a mid-level supervisor had reached the office of a lieutenant general. She did not know why 4 other generals had chosen to accompany him. But she understood, in that moment, that she had never been invisible. Someone had been watching. Someone had cared. The sedan stopped outside the administrative block. General Deshmukh turned to her. "Take care of your mother," he said. "And keep your ID in your bag." He almost smiled. Then the door closed, and the sedan glided away. The morning after the incident, Aisha arrived at the base gate earlier than usual. She had checked her bag 3 times before leaving home. Her ID was in its usual front pocket, but she had also placed a photocopy in her wallet and a digital scan on her phone. She was not going to be caught unprepared again. The sun had not yet risen fully, and the air was cool and damp. A thin fog hung over the road leading to the complex. As she approached the pedestrian entrance, she noticed that the guard booth looked different. The usual rotation of morning guards had been replaced. Constable Sharma was nowhere to be seen. In his place stood a younger woman with a neat ponytail and a serious expression. She wore the same blue uniform, but her posture was different, less defensive, more attentive. "Good morning, Mum," the woman said. "ID, please." Aisha handed over her card. The guard scanned it, nodded, and returned it with a small, professional smile. "Thank you. Have a good day." That was it. No questions, no bench, no humiliation. Aisha walked through the barrier and into the complex, her footsteps echoing on the concrete path. She felt a strange sense of relief, but also a lingering unease. What had happened to Constable Sharma? Had he been punished? She did not want him to lose his job. He had been rude, yes, and inflexible, but he was also a man following orders in a system that rewarded strictness over compassion. She resolved to say nothing. She would go to work, do her job, and let the matter fade, but the matter did not fade. By mid-morning, word had spread through the administrative block. Someone had seen her getting out of the general's sedan. Someone else had counted the 5 generals. The office grapevine, which usually carried gossip about birthdays and promotions, was now buzzing with a single question: who was Aisha Khan, and why did 5 generals come to her rescue? Her colleagues looked at her differently. The ones who usually ignored her now smiled and said hello. The ones who had never invited her to lunch now asked if she wanted to join them at the canteen. Even Mr. Mehta, her usually distant supervisor, called her into his office and closed the door. He sat behind his cluttered desk, a thin man with reading glasses and a nervous habit of tapping his pen. "Aisha," he said, "I need to tell you something. When you texted me yesterday, I was in a meeting with the Chief of Staff. He is a friend of General Deshmukh. I excused myself, stepped into the hallway, and called the general's aide directly. I told him that one of my best employees was being humiliated at the gate because of an honest mistake. I did not expect him to come himself. I certainly did not expect him to bring 4 other generals. Aisha nodded slowly. Why did he bring them? Mr. Mehta leaned back in his chair. The general was on his way to a strategic planning meeting. The other 4 generals were already in his car. They were discussing a new security protocol when my call came through. General Deshmukh asked his driver to turn around and go to the main gate. The other generals, I am told, insisted on coming with him. They wanted to see for themselves how their own employees were being treated at the front door. She sat with that information for a moment. 5 of the most powerful men in the military hierarchy had detoured from a high-level meeting to sit in a dusty parking lot and watch a young woman be denied entry to her own workplace. It was absurd. It was also, in a strange way, beautiful. Thank you, sir, she said, for calling them. Mr. Mehta waved his hand. You are a good worker, Aisha. I don't want to lose you over a piece of plastic. She returned to her desk and tried to focus on her files. But her mind kept drifting back to the bench, the heat, the feeling of being invisible. She wondered how many other employees had sat on that bench over the years. How many had been turned away for forgetting a card, arriving late, or wearing the wrong shoes? How many had never had a supervisor like Mr. Mehta, or a general like Ravi Deshmukh? The system was not broken, she realized. The system was working exactly as designed. It was designed to create barriers. It was designed to separate people into those who belonged and those who did not. And the guards, like Constable Sharma, were simply the human hands that held the barriers in place. 3 days later, she received an unexpected summons. A letter arrived at her desk, printed on thick, official stationery. It was from the office of Lieutenant General Deshmukh. The letter requested her presence at the general's headquarters at 2 p.m. on Friday. No reason was given. Her heart pounded as she read the words. She showed the letter to Mr. Mehta, who raised his eyebrows but offered no explanation. Just go, he said, and wear something professional. On Friday afternoon, she walked to the headquarters building, a large, angular structure at the center of the complex. The entrance was guarded by 2 soldiers in ceremonial uniforms, but they did not ask for her ID. They had been expecting her. A young aide escorted her through a series of long, silent corridors, past offices filled with maps and screens, until they reached a heavy wooden door. The aide knocked twice, opened the door, and gestured for her to enter. The office was large but sparsely decorated. A wooden desk stood near a window that overlooked the entire complex. On the walls hung photographs of military units, framed medals, and a single painting of a mountain range. Behind the desk sat General Deshmukh, dressed in his olive uniform, reading a document. He looked up as she entered and pointed to a chair. Sit, please, she sat. Her hands were folded in her lap. She tried to keep her breathing steady. The general placed his document aside and folded his arms. I have reviewed the security footage from the main gate on the morning you were denied entry. I have also reviewed the duty logs for Constable Sharma. Do you know how many employees were turned away from that gate in the past 6 months? She shook her head. 47, he said. 47 people, most of them junior staff, most of them women, most of them with legitimate reasons for forgetting their IDs. Some were sick. Some had family emergencies. Some simply made a mistake. Every single one of them was sent to that bench and told to wait for hours. Some never came back. He paused, letting the number settle in the air. I did not know about any of them until you. Not because I am a bad leader, but because the system was designed to hide these problems from me. The guards reported only what they wanted me to see. They reported threats. They reported breaches. They did not report the human cost of their rigidity. Aisha felt a strange shift in her chest. This was not a scolding. This was an explanation. Constable Sharma has been reassigned to a training role, the general continued. He will spend the next 6 months learning about discretion, empathy, and the difference between security and cruelty. But that is not why I called you here. He stood up and walked to the window. I called you here because I want you to help me fix the system. I want you to serve on a new committee, the Employee Dignity and Access Review Board. You will work with security personnel, human resources, and legal advisors to rewrite the gate access protocols. You will help us decide when a guard should make a phone call, when a supervisor should be contacted, and when a bench should never be used again. The general turned to face her. You are the person who sat on that bench for nearly an hour. You are the person who did not scream, did not cry, did not threaten. You are the person who waited patiently and then walked into my car with dignity. That makes you exactly the right person for this job. He returned to his desk and slid a folder toward her. Inside was a formal appointment letter, a list of committee members, and a proposed timeline for the new protocols.